Okay, so it's 5 o'clock. We have a tight agenda tonight. I want to go ahead and get started so we have the maximum time for our presentations. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Kelly Housley Glover. I'm the Wasco County Community Development Director, and I'm joined tonight by panelists Paula Grandell, who's the Environmental Health Program Manager, Daniel Doherty, who's the Planning Director for Wasco County, and then Kylie Ruby, who's our Deputy Building Official. So recognizing the emotional and logistical challenges that many of you are navigating, our development services departments have asked for folks to submit questions in advance. And then they prepared presentations really to address some common misunderstandings, address those bigger, broader questions that we heard from lots of folks, and give an overview of what the redevelopment process is going to look like. And thank you for those of you who did submit questions in advance. We won't have time to address all of the questions. We have a limited window today. So for those of you who submitted questions, and we do have your contact information, a staff person will be following up with you with information. We're also using the information provided in the presentations tonight and those additional questions that we had to update the FAQs that are currently on the Wasco County website. So all of this information will be available. We've also left our business cards, myself and the panelists. So if you have specific questions that you want to talk to a specific department on, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help. Our presentations are going to go for about 45 minutes tonight. We want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of the redevelopment process, again, starting with public health and then going to planning and building codes. And then following the presentations, we've set aside about 15 minutes for residents who would like to set up a one-on-one appointment with the whole development services panel. And what we're going to do is have information ready to go when you come meet with us. We've got about 18 appointments ready to go tonight. And that's going to give us all a chance to sit at the table and look at your property and help you start to work through your redevelopment and recovery plan. One of the things that you'll hear from all the presentations is that a lot of this is going to be case-by-case basis. Land use is complex. And so we really want to make sure that we're coordinated and working with you for your recovery. I also say we do have those 18 appointments available tonight. If there's a demand, we will coordinate to develop more meetings. And then you can also always reach out to independent departments to set up appointments. We want to make sure that we're walking in step with you towards your individual recovery. And when folks are lining up at the end of tonight to make appointments, a few of us will be floating around the room and you can grab us and ask any questions that you have. Before we kick into the presentations, I have some additional information that I want to share with you tonight that is time sensitive. So I've been working closely with the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area Commission staff to present to the commission on September 9th at their regularly scheduled hearing a management plan amendment request. And I have a sheet available for you here that outlines the concepts that are going to be proposed on September 9th and talks about a little bit about what that process looks like, and then has my contact information. So what we'll be presenting is a request that has some concepts attached to it that we want the commission to deliberate on. Those are things like allowing some more flexibility, creating a faster timeline for folks, and also exploring opportunities for more temporary uses. So if that request is approved in September, then I'll be working in close concert with Columbia River Gorge Commission staff to develop the actual language that will be then presented at a further hearing. And then we'll have to move through that legislative process. One thing that you can do if you feel passionate and you want to share your voice and your story, that's incredibly powerful for the commission to hear that. So I would really encourage folks, if you're willing and able, to submit comments to the Gorge Commission ahead of, so you need to do it by the morning of September 8th. And really, I'd encourage you to talk about your story, the fire's impact to you, your family, and then what your vision of individual recovery looks like. That's going to be incredibly impactful and really help us technical experts as we're negotiating the process. And I've got information again on this sheet. It says your voice and it's got a timeline on it of how to go about submitting comments. So the email address that you write it to, and again, outlines sort of what I think the ask is. And I'm happy, again, my contact information is there. If you have any questions about the process or you want some help formulating an email, happy to help you walk through that process. The plan amendment is approved in September. Then we will start to work on the language and move through the process. A good way to stay informed about that moving forward is to sign up for the recovery notification email list. So we have a QR code, we have the URL, and also a paper sheet where you can sign up. And that makes sure you're getting all types of information about recovery, including the process as we work with the Gorge Commission. So with that, I'm going to head and start the presentations and turn it over to Paula Grindell.
Just here. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Paula Grindell. I'm the Environmental Health Program Manager at North Central Public Health District. Our office, the Environmental Health Department, is responsible for managing and issuing permits around septic systems. So, excuse me. So what I just want to remind everybody here is that my focus on this presentation is really going to be for those individuals who are rebuilding and needing to reestablish a connection with the septic system. I recognize that there are other situations here where you may not be rebuilding, but you may also have some septic needs, and that process may look a little bit different. I'll touch on that a little bit at the end, but I just want everybody to recognize that this is largely going to just focus on the rebuilding process through us. So again, our role here is to ensure that you have a safe, functioning, and adequate septic system to reconnect to. It's not often thought about, but wildfires and those response activities that follow can impact your septic system in ways that you're not going to see from the surface. And so that's why it's really important that we recognize septic systems in the recovery process. We really want to ensure that when you're now have your house ready to build, it's going to connect to a reliable septic system. Our role is to also work closely with planning and building. So when you're ready to start and you come with us, it will be important for you to provide what your building plans look like, because that's going to be important for us here in our septic process as well. A little bit before I go ahead and start with what that application process looks like, just as Kelly was mentioning, is that, every property is unique, every septic system is different, and we really want to encourage you to reach out to our office and set up a one-on-one appointment with us. These one-on-one appointments are really helpful. We're going to sit down, we're going to go over any records that we might have on your property. We're going to learn more about these building plans and learn about those really unique features of your property that are going to be helpful for your recovery. It's going to support you all the way through. This number here, this is the direct line for environmental health. So please give us a call and we'll set that appointment up with you. So once you have that appointment and when you're ready to move forward with the application process, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to start your process with an authorization application. This is an application you're going to get through our office. Along with that application, you're going to need to provide us with what's called an existing system evaluation report. We also call this an ESER for short. This evaluation is going to be conducted by an Oregon DEQ approved installer or provider. When you establish working with somebody, they're going to be the ones to come to your property and they're going to do the evaluation and they're going to complete the report for you. And then you're going to bring that report with that application to us. And I want to emphasize that ESER, that evaluation, is key to us knowing what your next steps in recovery are going to look like. And just so if you guys, we have a resource table over there. I did print out, there's a list over there of some of our local licensed and approved installers in our area. And if you have any questions about, if you establish a relationship and you want to ensure that person is approved, call us and I'll make sure you're working with an approved installer. And this is where I'm going to move into some of the frequently asked questions that we've received already. And I want to emphasize that this here is actually the most frequently asked question. That is, if I'm rebuilding, do I need to have my system evaluated? And the answer is going to be yes. So we really need you to have that evaluation done. This here is another great question that we received. This question here is, if the fire damaged my septic tank, do I need to replace the whole system? The answer here is no. You only need to replace the part of your system that was damaged. So recognizing that a septic system has two major components. You have your tank and you have your drain field. And if you need a repair only on one of those, then you only need to do it for the one. This is another great question, and that is, what if my septic tank lid was damaged? Can it be repaired, and will I need a permit? So here on the side is just a visual on what a riser and a lid, those are the components of a septic tank. During a fire, those may have melted or been damaged, but there may not be damage to the bigger piece of your septic tank. So the answer here to this question is that a tank lid or a riser can be replaced as minor maintenance, and minor maintenance activities do not require an additional permit. If through your process we recognize that the tank was damaged, then we will issue and work on a permit towards that. This question here is, if my house was not impacted, but there is damage to the septic system, do I need a permit to make repairs? And so this goes to that piece where I was telling you in the beginning, where some of you may have different septic needs that don't require you to rebuild. And if your septic tank was impacted and there's a repair that's needed, you'll still want to reach out to us, and we're going to go through a process for a repair permit together. This question here too, in this area, if you have a well on my property that needs repairs or replacements, should I do that before I apply for a septic system? The answer to this question is that it's going to depend. It's really important to recognize that a well location can impact where a septic system is, and the septic system can impact where the well location is. And so if this is part of your situation that we're going to work through, you're going to want to we're going to coordinate on this together before you start doing any repairs on that well. And here is that if I apply for an authorization notice and then learn that I need a repair on my system, do I need a separate repair permit? The answer here is no, you do not need to apply twice. If it's determined during the authorization notice that a repair is needed, we will roll the repair permit in as part of your authorization, so we handle it together. So a great example of this is that you go ahead and you get your system evaluated from an ESER. and it is found out that perhaps your tank is not watertight and you need to replace your tank. Since you've already started the authorization application, we're going to just roll that repair right into your authorization process and not go through a second process. And here for one of the last frequently asked questions that we've received is that if my house was not impacted and there are not signs of impact to my septic system, do I need to have my system inspected or evaluated? And again, this is outside of rebuilding. And the answer is no. You don't need to have your system evaluated here, but I do want everybody to be aware of any signs that may indicate that your septic system isn't working. And so if you notice that you have any slow draining pipes, if you have any wet spots in the yard, maybe even a smell in the yard, those may be signs that your system is not functioning optimally. And in that situation, we're going to recommend that you reach out to an approved DEQ installer and have them come out and look at your system. So that's all of the frequently asked questions that we have for you here. But please, this is our contact information, and I want to encourage everybody to reach out. And if you have questions to your specific needs, we're here to help you.
So thank you, Paula. Next, Daniel Doherty from the Planning Division is going to give a presentation about some frequently asked questions with the land use planning process.
Good evening, folks. Daniel Doherty, Planning Division Director. I've talked to quite a few of you, and I've seen many of you at the earlier marks. So today I'm pretty much going to be talking about frequently asked questions that folks have pertaining to planning. The first issue is that for the most part, almost any type of development you are going to have on your private property is going to require some kind of a land use permit. And outside of talking to Paula, we're definitely going to be one of the first divisions or departments you're going to speak to. So I still want to encourage this one-stop shop sign up for folks, as well as just appointments. And we've been talking about that since pretty much right after the fire. Feel free to reach out to us at any time, and we'll help guide you through this process. So this is one of the more complex processes with regards to issuing and reviewing permits. But the most important piece to this is the front end questions. This is where you're going to build your plan. So it's very important to know where your septic system is going to be. Do you need a replacement septic system? What does your water look like? Certain engineering questions. Can you replace your dwelling or accessory structure on its existing foundation? So these are very important questions. The second piece is really these national scenic area criteria. And that's where planning can really help guide you through this plan, essentially. The second step is just apply. Once we've helped you build that application and you apply, there's going to be a public notification period. We're going to send out your plan to your neighbors as well as certain agencies, particularly the United States Forest Service with the National Scenic Area. And they're going to take a look at it. We're going to send it off to Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife for comments. A wide array of different agencies are going to review your plan and provide us comments, which will help shape the plan even further. The final portion of this is really the review and decision portion. And if we've handled and discussed all of the criteria on the front end, usually it can go fairly quickly after that. So what's the timeline for review? Really, it depends. It depends on how much work we've done on the front end. But the good news is that in most cases, the zone is rural residential. And so if you're asking for use of residential use and a replacement structure of a dwelling, that's going to help out a lot. We've also, the planners have performed a great deal of preliminary research, so legal parcel research, as well as historical background research on the structures to know when those structures were they placed by permits, or were they placed and built prior to permitting, so in the 1950s, the 60s. So we've done a lot of that homework on the front end. We're aiming for 45 to 60 days. We've had our first rebuild request. We were able to get the permits decided, so all the way through the steps in 60 days. I do want to point out that planning can help you meet these visual subordinate standards and the property development standards. And again, that's very important for you to talk to us early. Let us guide you through this process. More importantly, what's going to be a factor in that 45 to 60-day determination is the cultural resource reconnaissance survey coming back is not required, or a historical survey is coming back is not required. If that survey is required, it will generally push out the review timelines past 60 days. The United States Forest Service can perform required surveys, so they can perform a historical survey if it's required, or a cultural survey if it's required, but they put you in their queue and you have to wait. Private archaeologists can be hired, but of course the cost falls upon the applicant. Other questions pretty common is, can I have a shed? And yes, you can have a shed. We call them accessory structures and or ag structures, or buildings. That's an accessory dwelling. An accessory dwelling units in the scenic area aren't allowed quite yet, ma'am. So, but to stay on track, accessory buildings have to be accessory to your primary use, and in this case, it would be a dwelling in most cases, but they are allowed. Can I have a temporary use permit? So if the RV is occupied for more than 60 days, that usually runs along the lines of a residential use of a dwelling unit without a permit. However, we can approve the use of recreational vehicles as a temporary use while you rebuild your primary use, which would be your dwelling. So I provided an example here. This is common. So you're asking for a dwelling. You're also asking for an accessory structure. And in this case, you're also asking for a temporary use permit to occupy and live in a recreational vehicle until final construction of your dwelling unit has been achieved and it's habitable. Now, these are subject to permit timelines as well. So just keep that in mind when we're trying to rebuild. Another common question is, what are non-conforming lots or uses? Essentially, a non-conforming lot is a lot that was created, or a parcel that was created prior to modern zoning standards. So many of you may be in what we call rural residential 5. So it's a 5-acre minimum, but the lot was created in the 1960s at 2 acres. It's not going to preclude you from development. It will preclude you, of course, from dividing the property, but that's about it. A non-conforming structure is a structure that was generally built prior to the current zoning standards. So let's say the dwelling unit was built in the 1940s, and in the 1940s, they didn't have permitting, right? There was no building codes and or there was no planning. Another conforming use, which is somewhat common, is when you have a structure, it's in a residential zone, but that structure has historically been used for a general store. And so you've lost the general store in the fire, but you want to rebuild it and you want to continue the use as a general store. So that would be what we call a non-conforming use. The use doesn't technically align with the zone. So this generally preclude you from being a structure that had existed prior to building permits or prior to permits. That again, we've done a lot of historical research on these properties. So again, it's just really a case by case basis. So come on and talk to us and we'll help you out. The big one is abandonment. You have to be careful with abandonment of those uses and abandonment of those structures. It's a 24-month period. So time is of the essence. We want to make sure that if you want to rebuild, that you rebuild it in a manner so we don't really have to get into has the use or has the structure been abandoned. So the structural portion there that was not originally constructed with a valid permit. And so in this case, it could be that you had a dwelling unit that was built with a valid permit, but somebody along the line built an addition to the structure without a valid permit. In that case, the addition, if we can't find any record that the addition was built either prior to property or was built with a valid permit, the dwelling might be allowed, but the addition we might run afoul there. It won't necessarily preclude you from having the addition. We just couldn't replace it in kind. So we couldn't replace a one-for-one replacement. We would have to consider the addition new development. How can I build for fire resistance? We've covered fire safety standards since roughly 2006. And so our Chapter 11 fire safety standards provides a lot of property development standards, which are required for development. It's required for replacement development. They deal with siting standards, defensible space, construction standards for dwellings and other structures. So this is certainly a good place to start. It's going to be required anyways. The good news is these standards aren't black and white. We allow for fire mitigation standards that if you can't meet this, then we would run a fire mitigation plan across Mid-Columbia Fire and Rescue. So if you can't meet, for example, a 50-foot setback because your parcel's too small, it's not something that we can't get through. So how can this meet the scenic standards? This is kind of one of those myths that it's impossible to meet the scenic standards. It's not impossible to meet the scenic standards. Again, in most cases, the zoning is general management area, RR, rural residential. The standard for this is visually subordinate. And what that means is that your new development or your replacement development does notably contrast with the defining landscape. And I want to make it clear that visually subordinate does not mean invisible. And I'll give you some examples of what structures look like when they're not visibly contrasting against the landscape. But it's certainly doable. Metal roofs are allowed, but it's important to understand that in order to maintain that visual subordinates, you need to ensure that you're using dark earth tone matte colors. And so those non-reflective earth colors. We'll use vegetative screening if necessary. It's not always necessary though. So this is an example of developments. These are all AI generated, but this is an example of darker tone colors on the body and trim, and that's important. As you can see, this dwelling doesn't. It's not noticeably contrast with the background, with the greenery. Having fewer large windows helps as well. We have had applications in the past where we call it the wall of windows. That's going to have reflectivity issues. But avoiding those walls of windows is important. Avoid bright colors where possible. We can condition anything. So if you buy something, you buy a manufactured dwelling, we can condition the manufactured dwelling to be painted dark earth tone. So you don't necessarily have to buy a manufactured dwelling that's already painted dark earth tone. You can buy something, we can condition it, and you can paint it at a later date. Sometimes it just is simply just orientation. You can see on this metal roof that there is some reflectivity, but it might just simply be just orienting the structure in a certain way. Again, we have to look at each individual property and where those key viewing areas are. For the most part, it's probably going to be I-84 and Highway 30, but this is why it really is a case-by-case basis. And again, we're here to help. We'll do the site visit. We will take photos from specific areas and the key viewing area. A lot of the times geography intercedes in the visibility anyways. So again, it's really a case-by-case basis. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about contrast. This does noticeably contrast, and it's just simply because of the color. And this is, I think, a pretty good example. This is another example from a distance, and it's noticeable. You can see it. That's what visual subordinance is. It's not invisible. And so our codes are out here. And again, we're going to have clinics set up and where you can talk to all of us at the same time. If you can't get into a clinic, we're always available, as some of you folks already know, because we've talked to you, we've set up appointments. So again, feel free to reach out to me. That's my email address. And again, our cards are out. So thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. So we're going to wrap with Kylie, who is our deputy building official. And I don't believe, Kylie, you have a presentation. You're just going to, yeah, great, thanks.
Yes, I do not have pretty slides for everybody. So I am Kylie. It's actually Van Orman now, but I am your deputy building official. I do recognize a few faces that have popped in and talked to me and my staff. So we are your last stop in your rebuild process per OAR. Your sanitation and planning approvals will need to come first before we can get into our review. We will do our best if we know you are on the path to approval through these two offices. We'll do our best to review your plans concurrently with them. I do have a small office, so staffing might be a challenge, but we will try to get you in the review queue as quickly as possible. And so what we need, and there's a sheet on the table in the back, it's our residential plan submittal intake checklist. I do need a full set of construction plans. And that doesn't mean you have to get us everything all up front. My staff and I will coach you on what you need. You can give us what you have and we will look through it and let you know if we're missing pieces. But that checklist in the back does have a good description of what we're looking for on plans, and it's got details on what to put on them, like room labels, sizes, things like that. The good news is that our Oregon Residential Specialty Code has a specific section dedicated to events like this, basically, where a house, if it is damaged due to something that is out of its control, such as fire, you can basically put it back the way it was. There are some stipulations, and they are on a sheet in the back that we can require you to bring up to current code to the maximum extent practical. But for the most part, a legally existing structure, as long as it is not unsafe, we have a lot of flexibility for events like this. And much like what Daniel said, it's with working with you guys, our code is not black and white. It is meant, we just need to meet the intent of it. So believe me, we can get real creative if we need to. So if there's any specific questions, like Daniel said, myself, you don't have to just talk to myself. My staff is very knowledgeable. I have 2 permit techs and 2 inspectors that can help if I am not in the office for some reason. So because of the flexibility in the section in our ORSC, there is also some leeway on mechanical system requirements, which have been a big thing lately in the last few years that Oregon has been really ramping up. So there's flexibility with even those systems of not having to have the huge requirements of current code. The thing you would want to keep in mind, though, is there are grants and rebates out there for certain energy things. So, but they would require you to bring up to current code, if not better. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you're wanting to go for grants, you might not be able to use the exception in the code and have a lesser system. In regards to our review time, so when you bring in a set of plans with your application, my staff and I have 3 days to look through it and let you know if we're still missing pieces or if it's complete. We typically don't take 3 days, but this might, I mean, if there's a big influx of folks applying all at once, that's our limit. If for some reason we just get a huge amount of intake, we will definitely be in contact with you and let you know if we need an extra day or if we run up into a weekend or something like that and we just can't get you your intake done in 3 days. Simple residential plan reviews, which would mean anything that doesn't require engineering. The turnaround time is 2 weeks, 10 business days, basically. So if your plans do require engineering, that can take longer. There's no set timeline for that. However, there's very few cases I have run into where my plan review took longer for engineered plans as opposed to simple plans. So it's typically a 2-week turnaround time. My staff and I are very communicative, so if there is any hurdles, we will let you know. And then if I do have questions on your plans, it's just a matter of getting those questions answered and how long that takes. So your plans do not necessarily need engineering. I know that is a big question. If you are able to design your home based on our specialty code, which is a prescriptive design is what we call it, which most homes can get there. And like I said, we are able to get creative as long as we can meet the intent of the code. So if you want some of the things that run into engineering, or if you want a huge wall of windows, that's a lot of times going to run you into engineering because there's not enough wall line to keep your home upright and required bracing. If you are built into a hillside and need a retaining wall foundation, that's another item that often requires engineering. If you have a second story deck, that's a little bit hard for me to fit into code. So there are some items that if you have questions, definitely either sign up for one of our appointments or come talk to my staff and I, and we'll let you know if it might run up into engineering. Most houses I see, even ones that have engineering, don't really need it. So if you can draw me a set of plans, you can draw them, you can get a draftsman to draw them. As long as I can clearly see what you're doing and my inspectors can clearly use it in the field to see what you're installing, then you don't need a professional to draw your plans. And then one of the biggest questions we have had is, can I use my existing foundation? And that is a very case-by-case basis. Obviously, concrete can crack quite terribly when it gets hot. And so if it's a shed or something that you want to plop on a slab that's still there, that's usually not a big deal. If it's your dwelling, we will ask you to get an assessment and a report from a licensed engineer from the state of Oregon, because we just don't have the ability to make that assessment in our office to make sure that that slab or that foundation is structurally sound. And especially if it was constructed prior to when our Oregon code came into effect in 1975, we really don't know how it was built. So for a dwelling, if you want to use your existing foundation, we would ask for an engineer's report. Our inspection hours are Monday through Thursday from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. If there's extenuating circumstances, we are available. I am typically in the office more than I'm supposed to be, and so you can always give us a call. It's based on availability, but our typical office hours are 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Thursday, except for major holidays. And then one of the most important things that I can caution you with is make sure you are working with licensed contractors if you are going to hire a contractor. I have cards in the back that have phone numbers and QR codes that will take you to the website for both the Construction Contractors Board and Building Codes Division to make sure your contractor is licensed. And we do run into unlicensed folks. We have run into folks who will try to use someone else's CCB number. So please be very cautious. Take the cards, give us a call. It's all online that you can find, or you can call the folks down at those licensing divisions. The CCB is going to be for general, every contractor needs a CCB license in the state of Oregon. The specialty licenses for journeyman plumbers, electricians, those ones are the ones that you would need to contact the building codes division to verify their license for. But again, it's all on those cards back there, and that is something to be that's very important. People do try to take advantage of these situations, and we would like that to not happen to any of you guys. So, and one of the other handouts I have back there, Daniel touched on fire hardening standards for planning. The Green Residential Specialty Code has an entire section dedicated to wildfire mitigation for the structure itself. This is not a section that we currently enforce, but I printed off the entire section in the back so you have some information of what you can do. And in the future, it may become enforceable if the state, that would have to come down from the state, and if it does become enforceable, there will be a lot of notification ahead of time. But it's just back there for informational purposes right now, for ideas. It is all code language, so if it's not clear what it's meaning, then just ask my staff and I, and we can translate it for you, basically, because code isn't always super duper clear. But it is back there for information. So that is, I think, all I have.
Okay, thank you, Kylie. So that concludes our formal presentations. As I mentioned, we have some time to set up appointments with you for these panel clinics. Again, that's an opportunity to meet with, individually meet with all of the different departments and to go over your individual redevelopment and recovery plan. So that's a great opportunity. And we only have 18 slots coordinated tonight. But we will, if there's a demand, coordinate for more. And we've got the folks, division staff is set up over here. You can see the three gentlemen, Armando, Sherman, and Dustin. They're happy to help set up those appointments for you. And right next to them is all of the written material that the panelists have referenced tonight so that you can have something to take away and review. For folks online, one of the reasons we had you register is so that we do have your contact information and can follow up with you about setting up appointments. So just know we will have your information and follow up with an email tomorrow to any available appointments, or if we need to make some additional appointments available, we'll connect with you on that. I'd like to again encourage you to sign up for the notification email for recovery. Again, there's a QR code if you're savvy on your phone, or you can use a pen and paper and give us access to your email address. We're going to enroll you in newsletter that comes out. We have some information about this recovery, also touches on these development services pieces. So if you want to know how things are progressing with the Gorge Commission, for instance, we're going to stay in touch. So if you want to know about appointments that open up, to be a great way to get into information. So I would thank you for coming and joining and hearing the presentations and how we address FAQs. I'm sorry if we weren't able to address your specific question tonight. Again, if you did send that in, we have your contact information. We'll be following up by email. If you didn't, we will be updating the FAQs and loading that up to the website so everybody has access to the same information. And a couple of us are going to be hanging out. Folks are signing up to answer any kind of one-on-one questions that you have. So thank you again for joining us tonight. I hope this information has been helpful. And please, you've heard all of the panelists say, we really look forward to working with you one-on-one, helping you on your individual recovery. So we can't stress that enough. Please don't be shy. Please reach out to us. We're here to help you. Thank you.